Hello Warhammerians, I'm King Link and this is a last look and review of Warhammer Vermintide 2, or just Vermintide 2, because that's what I'll probably call it. Now, I know my voice might sound a little bit different, I might be mouth breathing a little more. The fact is I'm a little bit under the weather, I need to get a little bit healthier, but with the Humble Monthly Bundle running out, I need to get this video out, and in addition, I'm not feeling that bad. In addition, we also have a new piece of audio software, so if there's any bugs, I think it will do better than the DaVinci Resolve for a few things. So, once again, we're in the middle of the Humble Monthly Bundle, like I said. We've already seen Earth Defense Force 4.1. We'll see Cultist Simulator next, but right now we need to dive into the world of Warhammer. And dive we shall. You know, the fact is Warhammer is a massive, massive franchise. I found out just in games and expansions, there's 75 games here, and I believe more than half of those are in the Warhammer Fantasy brand, which is what we'll be playing now. Honestly, the lore of this series is just too massive for me to really cover. It just feels overwhelming. The good news, that's not a problem with Vermintide 2. So, let's start with the graphics. I'll be playing a random level here, but I lucked out and playing actually a pretty good level. It's actually a race through the castle, fighting off some catapults and more. Check the screen as I go so you can follow along. But, you know, King Link to the rescue. Da 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 da! So, I'm working with, I believe, 3 players here with no AI in this game, and luckily, no one with an obscene name. You know, half of my failed recordings when I'm doing this stuff comes from an oh-so-clever name or someone spamming the chat box. Honestly, the game is so fast, I had problems capturing screenshots, but here we have me tackling a ton of enemies. You'll see me going after a horde that are attacking me. Check it out. With that said, though, the enemies look really good. I was kind of surprised, and the characters are nicely detailed. The world, you know, the world is a little bit empty. There's no friendly or at least non-aggressive NPCs, but for the most part, this is a PvE game where you go against waves of enemies, hordes, really, and man, it succeeds at that. Now, the story of the game sounds like it's a continuation of the first game. There's the Skaven and the Chaos Marauders and more who are coming after you. You're chasing this rat mage who has a Skittergate, S-K-I-T-T-E-R gate. And, well, honestly, the story's not that important. You see, this is a multiplayer game, and similar to The Division and Destiny 2 and others, the game focuses more on the gameplay than the story. There's pieces, and there's a full lore, I'm sure, but it's not that important to the game, at least how it delivers it. The focus is on completing those missions. In addition, there's 3 major acts, really arcs of story, but each of those acts have 4 missions each. There's a final mission, which capstones the entire thing, once you beat all of them, for 13 missions total. Now, you do play them each act in order, but you can hop between the different acts, and if you choose quick play, it will make you do that quite often. As such, the story of each act is a little bit lost on the player. Now, the good news, though, is that each mission does have a firm reason for existing, and it's actually, I don't even know if there's a bad mission here. Whether it's gathering black powder and blowing up an altar, destroying large bells, or disrupting a ritual, there's good reasons for each mission. Really, though, you're here for the gameplay. The fact is, the gameplay in Vermintide 2 is fantastic. It's really, you know, it's taking Left 4 Dead, placing it in the Warhammer universe, and letting it go free. There's, of course, more than a ton to that story, but at its core, Vermintide 2 is really that. You have 5 characters. They're also called careers, and you have 3 different tiers of careers per character for 15 total careers. You unlock the higher tiers as you level up each character. Now, you end up taking 4 characters into a match. You'll all have to be different. If you don't have 4 characters, you'll have AI filling out the group as necessary. And you just wade through waves of enemies to complete your mission on each level. It's actually well done. Now, the core of the game really focuses on melee combat. In fact, out of the 5 classes, most play very similar, at least in a quick look. The only really big change is that the mage class has infinite ammo, but an overcharge or overheating aspect that will keep her from it. So, each class has different abilities, talents, and intrinsic power, and even when you move up a tier, all of that will change as well. But at the end of the day, you're all going to be swinging your weapons, and sometimes using ranged ammo when necessary, skills and everything else as possible. Now, each mission is well-paced, and while the Horde constantly makes you move forward so you don't have to constantly struggle through them, you still have a lot of area to cover. I will say one of the small issues I had with this game is the level layout. You know, some maps are just, I don't want to say awful, but awful. Spawning in can get you lost because you don't know how you got there, and even if you know, sometimes a wrong turn turns into a circular nightmare. You know, it's a minor issue, but I did see it happen more than once. Okay, it happened to me more than once. There's a few UI issues too. The green outlines don't always seem to appear, and there's no indicator about where you should go. You know, all of this is a choice in level design, but I don't like it that much, especially when you're stuck. Though I will say, after you play level 2 or 3 times, you will get better at the game. You will stop having these same issues, so you get over it relatively quickly, and the level design is decent once you really step back and look at it. Now, there are special enemies in this game, of course, Left 4 Dead style, but unlike the typical Left 4 Dead style, there's no witch. Tanks are a little bit different, I'll get to that. And, well, there are some, like the Leaper. There's a lot more magic users, and they're really interesting different enemies here. In addition, rather than tanks, we have monsters. And what those are, they're like mini-bosses in the middle of the level. You have anywhere from 0 to 2. It looks like it's completely random. And basically, they're like tanks, but they get a health bar, they have unique attacks, and if you actually end up fighting one-on-one, you'll really have an interesting battle with them. Of course, they'll be focused on you when that happens. There's also main bosses on 4 of the levels. They have end bosses for those, and those are also very good fights. In addition, compared to EDF 4.1, there's a great feature here that, you know, that game should have had. Join in progress. So, I actually joined a level at the end of the level with only about a minute left in it and got a full reward. All the XP, all the loot, and that's really amazing. Really, anyone doing multiplayer games should look into how that is done because it's a huge incentive to join other people's games. Speaking of which, well, I just posted the microtransactions discussion. I'll link it at the end of the video if you're interested, but we're going to go over a big piece here. You get loot boxes. Now, I know people are like, oh no. No complaints on this. There's no microtransactions, so let me explain why that's important. I'll have to do a little bit of math, but trust me, I'll try to keep it light. You get a loot box, and what do you get out of it? Well, it's a little complicated, but take the highest gear score you ever pulled out of a loot box. Not owned, not equipped, not even on that character, but have ever received. Let's say you once got a 150 gear score. Add and subtract 10 points to it, that's your range. So for 150, you end up getting a 160 to 140. Great. So now that you have that, you get 3 items from that range. You could get a 158, a 145, and a 140. Open up another box. If you got that 158, your range moves up. It's now 168 to 148. You always go up. If you get stuff below your level, it stays at that level. Now this is loot boxes without microtransactions. They don't want you to pay more, they want you to play more. And you know what? It works. I want to say a big kudos to Fat Shark for thinking of the consumer. That's what I'm talking about, and it makes it a great system. Now the loot itself is good. There's minor customizations in what type of loot you'll take, mostly in the weapon and the ranged attacks that you have, and it's all good. There's rarity systems, there's a forge that you can do crafting in and more. I did a little bit of that, but I'll let you guys discover that on your own. No complaints from what I've seen. Now, one last thing. After the first 13 missions, however long that will take you to complete, for me it was about 15 hours, maybe a touch less. Once you're done, you go back and you play more. You'll replay missions, go for higher difficulties, level up new characters, and more. It's a grind, but the higher difficulties are quite a bit harder, so there's some interest there. There's 5 different characters with some minor changes there. It's worth checking out and keeping that loot coming in. After 13 missions, I actually hit about 100 gear score, only opening up the level 100 boxes, saving the 300 gear score boxes for later, and started opening those, of course, and it's basically just this huge treadmill you can run on. There's leveling, equipment, crafting, you know, there's tons more. I stopped playing, but I like the game enough that I could be talked into a bit more, but it does become a touch of a grind. Now, there's of course a little bit more that I could talk about. I wanted to make a fast video, so check the link in the description if you want all the information. Really though, as I've said, this is Left 4 Dead Warhammer Edition, and you know what? There's no problem with that. If you like fantasy, if you like combat, if you like 4-player, multiplayer, PvE, this has it. You know, it's definitely for the Warhammer fans. If you are one, grab this, but the rest of us will still have a great time. And honestly, I was surprised at how much fun I had here without having to dive deep into the lore. I give Warhammer Vermintide 2 a 4 out of 5. It's really a great game. You know, it's not perfect, and if you don't like multiplayer PvE or Left 4 Dead, I don't think this is going to change your mind, but I'm really happy with this one. If you grab the Humble Monthly Bundle or you have this in your library or other ways, just definitely spend a little bit of time. It's a very solid game. With that said, that's Warhammer Vermintide 2. Coming up next, as mentioned, it's Cultist Simulator 2. I honestly don't know what I'm going to say about that one. You're going to have to come back to me on that one. And if you've enjoyed this review or just want to see what's coming up next, consider subscribing. Now listen, you're going to want to hear what I have to say about Cultist Simulator. I really don't even know where I'm going with it yet. So here's my suggestion. Ring the bell to get notifications when I post it, and that way you can be one of the first to see it. I know the YouTube algorithm might recommend it to you, but it doesn't always show me my subscriptions first. This is your way of controlling what you will actually hear about. Take the power back from YouTube, ring the bell, and fight the power. Until then, guys, I'm King Link, and thank you for watching.